Hello, welcome to the Tuesday night stream, everyone. I hope you're doing well, having a good week so far. A very busy day for me today at work and playing with Azure things and learning new things, PowerShell, things like that. So I have not been able to do as much as I would like to, but I am checking in. I did do some study today and, of course, yesterday. And I'm going to go into that in a moment. Yeah, I played a lot with Azure. So there's some cool features, I have to say. And it's funny that I'm actually working on this kind of stuff. I was a VCP, VMware Certified Professional, back in version 4.0 or 4.5 or something like that of vSphere. And so, I used to do a lot of virtualization, storage, SAN, iSCSI, things like that. Have done a lot of work with that and kind of getting back to it a little bit these days. On the team I'm on, you have to be very kind of diverse and ready to sort of pick up anything. So I had a task today, I was trying to, there's some cool features in Azure related to, taking a snapshot of a virtual machine and then copying it somewhere else or, sort of cloning. It's not as snazzy as what I remember vSphere to be. But, the cool thing about it is in the cloud, it's unlimited in terms of, creating multiple copies, or you need to spinning up new VMs. You don't really have to worry about, are you going to have enough resources? That's not a problem. So that's really cool about it. And, you can copy around to different regions. That is a problem, though. And I hope to see some, I don't know how it is in the other cloud providers, but there are often limitations between moving resources or copying resources between regions. So let's say you have, for example, in one region could be Latin America. I don't know all the regions outside of. I know several in the United States pretty well. For example, you have West US, East US. South Central US, place like that. So if you want to copy between regions, you can sometimes run into a few little hurdles, and I dealt with some of that today. Finally got some good PowerShell, found some good PowerShell scripts out there that people already put together to sort of make those things happen, because sometimes intuitively within the portal, it's some things in Azure you cannot do in the portal. Let me just put it that way. You have to write a script, either a PowerShell or Azure CLI. Of course, there are other ways to script things in Azure, but it was definitely an interesting day and burnt a lot of brain cells. Well, hopefully not brain cells. It required a lot of energy today, but we got some of the tasks I was working on done just towards the end of the day, which is great. But yeah, QoS Exam Guide, getting back to the CCIE routing and switching, day 390. As many of you may know, I've been reviewing the official QoS Exam Guide. And it's just interesting as I talk about this because I'm not even really sure what the certification was. Let me see if I can I have it up here. I'm going to open up in a new tab so this is the book I'm going through, and it has been really good. But it was written in 2004, which is still great. But it talks about it is designed for an exam that I think no longer exists. Cisco QoS Exam Certification Guide. I guess that was part of maybe that was part of Cisco QoS 642 exam. I'm going to, that must have been part of 2010. Yeah, this is an older exam. But I'm thinking this may have been part of what is now the collaboration track. Anyway, it's still the best resource I've found so far to sort of cover in depth the different topics on QoS. So it's been great. It's really helped. I am on this chapter, this is available in Safari Books Online. So I'm still in congestion management, chapter 5. And what it does, it starts to break down. It starts out with WFQ. Well, first it starts with the different queuing methods and how they handle congestion management. So start out with FIFO, and I kind of talked about that a little bit yesterday. So I got past that subject, and now we're on WFQ, weighted fair queuing, which is, one of the most basic, actually I won't say basic because it's turning out to be one of the more complex. Even the book talks about that. It says in the beginning, when it introduces WFQ, first of all, it classifies based on flows. So generally when you think of like class-based weighted fair queuing or low latency queuing, which those are going to be coming up, right? Class-based weighted fair queuing and low latency queuing. You think of these as more, you have a set number of queues, like I think 64. If I remember, I'm probably wrong, but I think 64 is the max number of queues you can configure for class-based weighted fair queuing. So that's really your classification, right? You create a queue you create a queue for each type of traffic that you're wanting to queue and classify, queue, and potentially modify the behavior of, right? How those queues get treated by the scheduler. And so, that makes sense. So if I'm going to use classification and marking, right, I'm going to use classification. I can classify traffic as the network operator and assign a queue to a particular type of class of, traffic. And then I can influence how the scheduler is going to service those queues, right? Whether that be reserving bandwidth or reserving percentage of the bandwidth, etc. But with weighted fair queuing, it's completely different. And this is the older, of course, method. And I think it's stated that it is actually default on like older routers that have serial interfaces or T1 interfaces. You'll find that weighted fair queuing is on by default, and you have to actually turn it off if you wanted to use FIFO, for example. The current images, though, I checked, and if you do a show, there's some commands that I mentioned you could use with weighted fair queuing. I don't find those commands on the iOS V image. So like show queue, show queuing. Those commands are not, so some of the information is outdated a little bit. I don't imagine I'll see much for this on the actual exam, the lab exam. But I'm still going to at least try to understand. And the major thing about weighted fair queuing is the fact that it classifies and creates queues for traffic based on flows. So you could have, I think, in some platforms, like up to 4,000, different queues maximum, 4096, something like that. So yeah, it's totally changes the dynamic of how the scheduler works, what the net effect on your throughput is, and how those queues are serviced. I'm trying to understand it. I didn't just skip it though, and I am digging into it a little bit just because I think there are similarities with WFQ and what I'm going to see on switching. In fact, it already mentioned that. So like the shared round robin and shade round robin, some of the queuing and servicing of the queues by the scheduler, I think, are going to be similar. I don't know that for sure, but the WFQ and the book actually mentions that, right? It says that there are similarities. So anyway, hope to get this done tonight and then move on tomorrow to class-based weighted fair queuing and maybe even low latency queuing. I want to take a quick look at the chapter where I'm at. So I'm getting close to the end of WFQ. And basically this chapter is going over in detail, and I mean detail. Yeah, it is WFQ, CBWFQ, and LLQ. And there's some great charts in here. And I think we're about to get to, let me just double check the chapter list though, actually. Yeah, so we're going to do is, it looks like after I round out the WFQ portion, see, this is a long chapter too, as is the next one, which is traffic policing and shaping. But I think I'm coming close to finishing this because WFQ is taking up most of the chapter. It looks like CBWFQ and LLQ are not going to be as long, which is good. I still probably will not be able to do a lab though, because as we can see here, there is congestion avoidance through drop policies. And we haven't actually gone much into random early detection or weighted random early detection in this chapter. So to me, it almost looks like that's coming in a future chapter 7 here. So yeah, we're going to be on this a while. I'm thinking probably through the rest of this week. You know, I was thinking, well, maybe by tomorrow I'll be able to get to one of the labs, but no, it's not happening. It's probably going to be at the end of this week, probably on the weekend, I'll be ready to hit some labs. We're going to be hard charging on some reading here. I did fire up the lab today. I actually just closed a little while ago because I'm checking some of the commands that are mentioned in the textbook and just kind of, you know, checking those commands, seeing do they work on this platform because this is older material. So anyway, that's where I'm at, folks. Not much else to talk about. Again, it's been real busy for me today for work and everything else. So I don't have any meat chunks to share or labs. We're about to shut down the stream and get back into the books. Some good discussions on Discord, by the way. I was able to actually answer questions. Someone asked a question earlier about, it was this plus that. He was asked about OSPF and the XStart and the exchange modes. You know, because you know with CCMP and with CCIE that they're expecting you to know, one, all of the different phases of adjacencies with OSPF and the other routing protocols. And they want you to know and know how to troubleshoot when there are issues with adjacencies. And one of those common things that comes up with OSPF has to do with you know, XStart versus exchange. And you really need to know like what is happening during that phase of the OSPF adjacency, what information is being exchanged. There are very specific roles. And I was actually able to use an Anki card. It was in this deck, but I remember I didn't know the answer right away, but I knew where to find it. I knew to come here and I did a search for XStart and I found it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember reviewing that. So yeah, some good discussions there in OBS in Discord. So definitely check us out there. Keep the conversation going. Not much else to say tonight, folks. It is a brief. We are in, you know, nose deep in a book mode for this week. So it'll probably be brief agendas and streams. But I want to keep you up to date. Just, you know, send the good bits out there to everybody. Hope you're having a great week. No matter what you're working on or trying to understand or, you know, learn, you know, always keep the community involved and reach out if you need help. We'll see what we can do. We may not be able to do anything. We might be able to point you to someone else, another group, a book to check. We had someone ask today about what's a great BGP book, and I was able to immediately pull up, because I went through this phase. Like I evaluated, I think, I actually started and stopped maybe 2 or 3 different books when I was learning BGP. And I finally settled on this, and I've got it in my notes or book list, which is here, of course. Practical BGP. And actually, Russ White is one of the authors on there. It's a great, really good book for, it was to me, it was practical for me for understanding some of the intricacies of BGP. So I shared that in Discord. And again, let's stay active and stay in touch. And hope you all have a good rest of your evening. And we'll see you back here. We'll check in back with you tomorrow, as always, here on the LAN Tamer stream. And good bits. Have a great night.